All right, all right, all right. Welcome in, welcome in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's another good day. It's another great day, actually. Thank God for life and peace and joy. Today, we will be reading, or tonight, we will be reading from Joshua chapter 7, Old Testament Joshua chapter 7. Um, but before we get started with that text, I want to go over some quick background from Joshua chapter 6, the preceding chapter. We're going to read Joshua chapter 7 today, but I want to quickly go over Joshua chapter 6 and give you some quick background. So as many of you know, at this point, the Israelites are leaving or have left Egypt. They've crossed the Jordan. They've crossed the Red Sea, et cetera, et cetera. They've seen God do a lot of miracles. It's been 40 years since they've been wandering in the wilderness, and they're finally reaching their promised land after, wow, a long tenure of wandering and waiting and everything else you can imagine. So they're finally, in Joshua chapter 6, they finally got to the promised land, and the first city they basically face is Jericho. Now, it's a walled city. Jericho is a walled city, heavily protected, and there's no way to essentially get in. But the Lord gives the nation of Israel, the Israelites, a plan, and part of that plan to overtake or overthrow the city and capture the land is to, it's kind of strange, is to walk around the city silently for about 7 days, and on the seventh day, wait for the walls to fall down and attack the city. Very strange plan. Seems like it wouldn't work. Seems like it's not rational. But if you've been walking the Christian life sometime now and listening to God and trying to become your best and do your best, I think you've learned that, hey, sometimes God will ask us to do something that seems irrational, but oftentimes it turns out, not oftentimes, it turns out for the best when you listen to God. Now, it might not be, we might not always see immediate results, okay? But if we're following God and we're listening to God, even when he tells us to do things or puts it on our hearts to do things or leads us to do things that seem irrational, our best choice is to be obedient and just simply obey. So the Israelites follow the plan, the walls fall down, and they enter the city of Jericho. Now, there is a woman by the name of Rahab who's a harlot or prostitute, as we know that is. And she assisted in God's plan of action. So she assisted the Israelites and the spies of Israel. She assisted them in helping them get into the promised land. So she saved herself and her family. They were not destroyed, as like similar to what happened to the rest of the city and the rest of the people in the city, the men, women, and children. Rahab saved herself and her family by aligning with the Israelites and aligning with God's plan. So she helped them get to the promised land. Now, the Israelites were told by God to destroy everything in the town, men, women, children, but they were supposed to keep the gold, iron, and silver for the sanctuary of the Lord. Okay, they were supposed to get rid of everything: goats, camel, sheep, burn it all up, destroy it. But the gold, iron, and silver were for the Lord. Okay, just for the Lord's sanctuary. The first city is supposed to go to the Lord, just like in the Old Testament, the tithe was the first fruits, or the first of your money, your first of your income was supposed to be given to God, given to the Lord. Now, we don't do that today. We don't have a tithe, all right? We don't live under the law. We don't have to tithe anymore. The principle of giving is still there. And God blesses us for our generosity, whether it's time, our intellect, our knowledge, our funds, et cetera, our efforts. But yes, we don't have to tithe anymore. Okay, let me get back on track because I got off on my tangent. So the Israelites took over the land, the city of Jericho. They took the iron, the gold, the silver, and they put it into God's sanctuary. That was for God's sanctuary. Now let's bounce to Joshua chapter 7. since we had a little bit of background. Let me turn there in my Bible, Joshua chapter 7. And I will be reading from it's kind of lengthy. No, it's not that bad. It's about 20 verses. I will be reading from the New Living Translation. Verse 1, the first verse, very informative. But Israel violated the instructions about the things set apart for the Lord. A man named Achan had stolen some of these dedicated things, so the Lord was very angry with the Israelites. Isn't that interesting? One person made a mistake, and he's angry with the whole nation of probably more than 2 million people. So Achan was son of Carmi, a descendant of Zimri, son of Zerah of the tribe of Judah. Joshua sent some of his men from Jericho to spy out the town of Ai, east of Bethel, near Beth Aven. When they returned, they told Joshua, "There's no need for all of us to go up there. It won't take more than 2,000 or 3,000 men to attack Ai. Since there were so few of them, don't make all our people struggle to go up there." So approximately 3,000 warriors were sent, but they were soundly defeated. The men of Ai chased the Israelites from the town gate as far as the quarries, and they killed about 36 who were retreating down the slope. The Israelites were paralyzed with fear at this turn of events, and their courage melted away. Joshua and the elders of Israel tore their clothing in dismay, threw dust on their heads, and bowed face down to the ground before the ark of the Lord until evening. Then Joshua cried out, "O sovereign Lord, why did you bring us across the Jordan River if you are going to let the Amorites kill us? If only we had been content to stay on the other side. Lord, what can I say now that Israel has fled from its enemies? For when the Canaanites and all the other people living in the land hear about it, they will surround us and wipe our name off the face of the earth. And then what will happen to the honor of your great name?" But the Lord said to Joshua, "Get up. Why are you lying on your face like this? Israel has sinned and broken my covenant. They have stolen some of the things that I have commanded must be set apart for me. And they have not stolen them, but have lied about it and hidden the things among their own belongings. That is why the Israelites are running from their enemies in defeat. For now Israel itself has been set apart for destruction. I will not remain with you any longer unless you destroy the things among you that were set apart for destruction. Get up," command the people to purify themselves in preparation for tomorrow. For this is what the Lord God of Israel says: "Hidden among you, O Israel, are things set apart for the Lord. You will never defeat your enemies until you remove these things from among you. In the morning, you must present yourselves by tribes, and the Lord will point out the tribe to which the guilty man belongs. That tribe must come forward with its clan, and the Lord will point out the guilty clan. The clan will then come forward, and the Lord will point out the guilty family. Finally, each member of the guilty family must come forward one by one. The one who has stolen, set apart for destruction, will himself be burned with fire, along with everything he has. For he has broken the covenant of the Lord and has done horrible things in Israel." Verse 16, early the next morning, Joshua brought the tribes of Israel before the Lord, and the tribe of Judah was singled out. Then the clans of Judah came forward, and the clan of Zerah was singled out. Then the families of Zerah came forward, and the family of Zimri, was singled out. Every member of Zimri's family was brought forward person to person, and Achan was singled out. Then Joshua said to Achan, "My son, give glory to God, the Lord, the God of Israel, by telling the truth. Make your confession and tell me what you have done. Don't hide it from me." Achan replied, "It is true. I have sinned against the Lord, the God of Israel. Among the plunder I saw a beautiful robe from Babylon, 200 silver coins, and a bar of gold weighing more than a pound. I wanted them so much that I took them. They are hidden in the ground beneath my tent, with the silver buried deeper than the rest." So Joshua sent some men to make a search. They ran to the tent and found the stolen goods hidden there, just as Achan had said, with the silver buried beneath the rest. They took the things from the tent and brought them to Joshua and all the Israelites. Then they laid them before the Lord on the ground in the presence of the Lord. Then Joshua and all the Israelites took Achan, the silver, the robe, the bar of golds, wow, his sons, his daughters, cattle, donkeys, sheep, goats, tent, and everything he had, and they brought them to the valley of Achor. Then Joshua said to Achan, why have you brought trouble on us? The Lord will now bring trouble on you. And all the Israelites stoned Achan and his family and burned their bodies. They piled a great heap of stones over Achan, which remains to this day. That is why the place has been called the Valley of Trouble ever since. The Lord was no longer angry. Isn't it interesting? As I was reading, I thought in my head, isn't it interesting how Achan confessed to a sin? And I was thinking, well, why wasn't there any mercy, et cetera, et cetera? Yeah, he confessed to a sin after he was found out. We do that sometimes, don't we? After we're found out, we say, oh, I'm sorry, my bad. If he would have done it in the beginning, maybe there would have been more mercy. I'm going to say that again. If he would have asked for forgiveness or fessed up in the beginning, maybe there would have been more mercy. Because I'm sure he felt a bit of guilt. But his love of riches and gold and silver and bronze and iron was much more than his guilt, because I'm sure he felt guilty. He knew the rules. It was announced. The rules were announced to everybody. So I think the underlying message here, when we read chapter 7 of Joshua, is another look at obedience versus disobedience. It's so simple. Obedience versus disobedience. Are we going to do what God commands? Are we going to follow God's rules, or are we not? Now, it's very easy to think about. Sometimes it can be challenging to do. Sometimes it can be extremely challenging to follow what God's told us. But the underlying message here is obedience versus disobedience. And obedience saved the people who didn't steal anything. I also think we learn in this text that, essentially God tells Israel they won't be able to defeat their enemies without getting rid of sin. That's one thing we learn. But I think we also learn that, let me come back to that later. Let's jump to this. Essentially, like I just said before, God told Israel that they wouldn't be able to defeat their enemies without getting rid of sin. And one man's sin caused 37 people to die. I think it was 36. I think the text said 36. So Israel went up against Ai. They didn't bring their entire army. They only brought about 2,000 or 3,000 military men. They didn't bring their whole army because they sent spies up earlier, and they said, "Oh, this is a little city. We'll take care of them. God's on our side." They're thinking God is on their side, but they didn't know Achan stole what belonged to God's sanctuary. They didn't know that Achan stole what belonged to God. I hope none of us are doing that. Don't steal and keep for yourself what belongs to God. If he says give, give. Okay? It can be challenging. I'm not saying it's never challenging. But if he says give, give. Obedience. So I also like to say that those 36 or 37 warriors who died going up to fight Ai died because of one man. So you see how sin made the nation of Israel incur a loss. One person's sin. There's millions of people within the Israelite nation. One person's sin brought about a loss. Israel lost to Ai in the first battle. And about 36 people died because of one person's sin. Life gone. Can't get back. That means their wives, their children, okay, without a husband, without a father. Devastating. Now, while studying, I asked myself, why didn't God simply tell Israel that someone misbehaved before they fought Ai and they lost? Why didn't God just say, hey, before you go, before you make this decision, before you try to conquer this new land, this new territory that I've already given to you, someone's made a boo-boo, a mistake, a mishap. He didn't do that. God didn't alert them. And while I was studying, I was meditating on that idea, and I think this occurred because after actually losing a battle, the Israelites, after actually losing a battle, they learned to really obey God. Now they expected to win, which is great. Which is great. I think more of us should have that. We should expect to do well, should expect to win, should expect to live abundantly. Jesus in the gospel says, I came to life, I came that you may have life and live abundantly. Okay? I came to give you life and life more abundantly. That's what Jesus came to do. He came to give us an abundant life. So just like the Israelites expected to win, because the Lord told them that that was their land. They expected to win. They expected to win. We should be expecting to win in our personal lives and live abundantly. Okay. Now, when they lost, I think this occurred. I think God didn't tell them about the mishap beforehand or the sin beforehand. I think this happened is because they learned that it isn't all them that's causing them to win. It's not all their power that's causing them to win. Yes, they're engaged in battle, but it's not all them. The majority of it is God, okay? Because they just got routed. The nation of Israel just got routed by Ai, which was a small city, not a strong, big, strong, technologically advanced city. This is a smaller city, and they got routed. They got stomped on. It, I see it as it's setting a memory in their minds. Okay, I see God as setting a memory in their mind, saying, "Hey, look, you're not that strong. You're not as strong as you think you are." I think that goes for us too in the present day, myself included. You're not as strong as you think you are. You may have some smarts, you may have some ability and talent, but you're not as strong as you think you are. Because without me, you're going to get routed. It's not going to work. Your plans are going to foil. Okay. And again, it set a memory in mind, that loss that Israel endured sets a memory. And I think just saying things doesn't always stick. We learn from punishment or failure or severe punishment or loss. Think about talking to your child or your nieces and nephews or your grandkids. You can say something and they don't really get it, but if they have punishment, a lot of the times they remember that leaves a stain, that leaves an imprint and a memory. Okay. Now, the nation of Israel remembered the punishment of the liar. Achan, that liar. They remember where he was stoned, him and his family and his goats and his sheep and his cattle. Okay. Everybody remember what happened to the liar. Achan, the thief, Achan, the one who didn't obey God, Achan, the one that caused 36 people to perish and Israel to lose their first battle, Achan. This was setting precedents for everyone else. That was setting a precedent. It's like the Supreme Court, okay? When a new case comes to the Supreme Court and it's a trial or it's over an issue that's never come up before, it sets a precedent for all issues of similar kind that will come after it. This was a precedent. And if you read the book of Joshua, this was the only battle that was lost when the Israelites initially went into the promised land with Joshua. They only lost one battle, and that was it. So Joshua goes down as a great leader in Israel in the history of the Bible. He won over 30 battles, and this was the only one he lost, and it wasn't his fault. So I think that really set a precedence for the nation. After that, they saw that God wasn't playing. If we don't obey God, we're going to lose. If we do obey God, we're going to win. All right. Let me read verse 13 really quickly. Verse 13. Let me go to it and not just think about it off the top of my head. Verse 13 says, "Get up." This is God speaking, I believe. "Command the people to purify themselves in preparation for tomorrow. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Hidden among you, O Israel, are things set apart for the Lord. You will never defeat your enemies until you remove these things from among you." Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? So to win, Israel had to purify themselves. They had to get rid of objects. They had to get rid of sin. Now, objects can be hosts for the enemy. In this case, the objects were hidden, jewels, gold, silver, et cetera, et cetera. Those were supposed to be dedicated to the Lord. But those objects, holding those objects were sin. Today, we have different articles that are taken in modern times. Some people sometimes have a deck of cards that they use for spiritual things, Ouija boards, necklaces, rings, with certain occult practices, certain books that they have with certain occult practices and inappropriate books. Release those things from your home. Isn't it interesting that basically Achan put the things he buried them under his tent, which is basically his home, because they were sort of mobile. Think of them as very, what is the word? Mobile is not the technical term, but they're a nation of people that sort of wander and move around. So the tent keeps the mobile, but that was wherever his tent was, that was like his house, his certain abode, and those belongings were underneath his tent or his house. So it's extremely important that if we have those things in our home, to get them out, because they represent sin. Those Ouija boards, those deck of cards that are maybe from the other side, etc., etc. So I think that does enough. I guess we can do a lot more. I can probably go on for another 20 or 30 minutes. But I think I will conclude there. And I'm sure from that text, I want you to go read it at home yourself too. But I'm sure that you can see how obedience plays a role and gives life and abundance, and disobedience plays a role, which leads to death, destruction, corruption, and end. Okay. So it is our choice and our best interest that we obey the Lord.